Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome to another edition of eHeroes. Today's eHero is almost forgot. I'm going to stop and do it again. No, I'll just edit that. It's I wrote it down, and now I'm looking at your website. And I'm like,
And,
it's
and
not
it says Sally
Sally,
G.
it's
Yeah,
Sarah.
yeah, Sarah. That's okay. Sally would have been okay. I answered to both.
I have
I
an aunt.
created the confusion.
I
So,
have an Aunt Sally, and it just kind of and no one calls her Sarah. All right. Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome to another edition of eHeroes. For the audience that is listening, if you've ever suffered abuse or limiting beliefs or trauma, this next guest is going to be outstanding. Her name is Sarah Griffiths, and I messed up. But, I'm looking at her website, and it says Sally G, but her name is Sarah Griffiths. And I'm messing up, but, I'm just going to keep on rolling. And I want to welcome you, Sarah, to the show. And my apologies for messing up, but and I think that we all come on these shows, these podcasts, and we all have these beliefs in what we can do, what we can't do as entrepreneurs, but we always learn something different. And I learned that I can never be perfect in what I do, but you got to just roll with it. So
yeah,
welcome.
that's absolutely true. And you didn't really mess up anyway, because as you said, my website is Sally G. My nickname is Sally. I answered to Sally or Sarah. It really, it doesn't matter.
Well, I try to get names perfect when I start out, and and I know a lot of entrepreneurs want to be perfect in what they do, and I've learned a long time ago, perfect takes too long, costs too much money, and I think that was one of the first limiting beliefs that I had to overcome, was being perfect.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really common one. And the thing about being perfect is that you never can be.
Yeah.
Because perfect for whom? If you get it perfect for you, it won't be perfect for anyone else. If you get it perfect for someone else, it won't be perfect for anyone else. We all have a different ideal of what perfect is. So perfection is actually something that is, as you said, impossible to achieve. And unfortunately, our desire for perfection is often rooted in our childhood, depending on our parents. And it's all related to our human need to, well, obviously our need to survive, but it comes down to connection. We need to be accepted and to connect with the people around us. And unfortunately, as children, what we often perceive, and sometimes it will be due to what people are projecting onto us, we perceive that we need to be perfect in the eyes of another person. Otherwise, we risk rejection. And if we're rejected, we can't survive. And
Yeah.
that's just how our ancient primal DNA operates. Logically, of course, we know that it doesn't work that way, but we are not creatures of logic. We are creatures of emotion, and our subconscious is in control most of the time. So we have these very primal instincts and beliefs running through almost everything we do, which can make things difficult for us, especially when we don't know.
Yeah, and I think social media makes it worse. Social media was supposed to bring us together to make us communicate easier, but I think that it also gave us more tendency to look at ourselves and say, well, my hair's not perfect, my teeth aren't perfect, I don't want to do video, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And you look at your fan base and you're saying, well, they're so perfect. But social media, to me, is just another thing that you have to overcome.
Yeah, and we're very good at finding ourselves wanting. There are two main reasons for depression, and one of them is the harsh and critical words that we say to ourselves. Um, we are hardwired to find the negative in ourselves. And I always say to people, if you look at this, if you think about how you speak to yourself, even the words that you use and the way you beat yourself up about absolutely everything, you would never be friends with someone. You would never hang out with someone who talks to you in the way that you talk to yourself. You would just think that they were being really nasty, they were really mean, and that they're not a very nice person and they're not someone to be around. And yet you do it to yourself all day long and you don't even notice. We literally, because of the way we speak to ourselves, we cause our own depression.
Yeah, the self-abuse. Uh,
Yep.
and so, self-abuse is totally different than other people abusing you, but that I think that mental weight that you're carrying, trying to, be accepting to everybody is tremendous.
Yeah, and that's the problem, of course, that we all live with this. We're all living with this perception that we have to be what other people need and want us to be, rather than being ourselves, because we're so sure that who we are isn't enough. That we're trying to work out what other people want us to be all the time, and we're presenting this false self. And it never works. The things that work best are when we realize what we're doing. We realize that we're perfect the way we are. We'll always be right for the right people. It's only the people who aren't right for us that make us feel as if we're not enough. They don't matter because they're not our ideal clients or our friends, or they're just not the people that we want to be around. And what happens, what the best result always comes from when we are just ourselves, when we are honest, when we are authentic, when we act with total integrity, because then people have certainty and security in who we are, and people gravitate towards that.
Hmm.
But when we recognize that in other people, that self-confidence to just be themselves, we absolutely love that. That's what we're all pulled towards, and yet we don't try and do that in ourselves.
Right. And then I find, I mean, you spoke about ideal clients, and the last few years, I kind of have this avatar of exactly the type of person that I want to deal with, and one of the things has to be they have to get me, because
Yeah.
I'm a very sarcastic person, and if they don't understand that sarcasm, they're not going to understand how I'm trying to help them. They're just going to think I'm rude, I'm an asshole, you know, this guy can't help, but that's who I am. And if they can understand that level, that's a perfect ideal client for me. But
Yeah, and there's no point you pretending to be other than,
mhm,
because then you're just not going to click with the person. You've got the constant pressure of pretending, of holding yourself back, and this is the problem when we try to be something that we're not. And honestly, authenticity just wins every time.
yeah.
Every time you are just genuine and authentic, you will always attract the people that are right for you.
And I noticed that, over the years, the people that share their trauma, they share their experience with abuse, tend to be the ones that get more business because they're more open about it. People gravitate towards them and looking for an answer because those people have already experienced it.
And here's the thing about that as well, that so many people have some kind of trauma in their background that has affected them.
Mhm.
And for a long time, of course, people didn't speak out. The old view was stiff upper lip, don't show emotion, don't air your dirty washing in public. Whereas now, of course, we've come full circle, and we've got a whole generation of people who are looking, saying, no, I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to be honest about who I am. And what we're realizing is that there's almost no one.
Yeah.
that has got into their adult life unscathed by something that happened to them in their childhood that was traumatic. And it's not difficult to be traumatized when we're children. We don't have to have abusive parents. I had extreme trauma, and it was from being bullied at school. You can having very strict and controlling parents, parents who expect a lot, grandparents who are very severe. When you're a child and you're powerless and you're vulnerable, these things they're very real. And it's hard looking back as adults, because as adults we know that we have choice and we see things in a certain way, and we forget how children perceive things. Trauma is undefined. It's true, most of the trauma that I deal with, most of the people that come to me are women, and they are entrepreneurs, and a lot of them are dealing with some very severe sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. And it really does keep them stuck. Again, because of the stories it has taught them to tell themselves about themselves. It's because of the way it leaves you feeling. It leaves you feeling worthless, as if you have no value, no voice, no opinion. And, trying to be an entrepreneur with those kind of stories is very, very difficult. So we need to work to overcome those. But I'll also have people come to me who've been traumatized in other ways, and they're almost apologetic, and they're very grateful when I kind of point out to them that trauma is undefined. It doesn't have barriers, and trauma is basically anything that causes you to be someone that you wouldn't be if whatever it was hadn't happened to you. That's basically how we define it.
And those situations last in your subconscious for a long, long time, and they get triggered by
Yes,
certain things that happen today. And
absolutely.
I had a client that I said something, and it must have just triggered her just like that. And then she just went off the deep end and started yelling at me. I'm like, whoa, and I had to apologize. I had no idea, that would have done that.
What a brilliant illustration, though, of why we have to do the work. Because yes, we do. Our body and our mind, they hold on to the trauma. And because of the way, what happens is it's like when we are being abused, the body and the mind take a snapshot of what that feels like. It's a chemical reaction. It's a whole body reaction. And what your mind says is, okay, when this happens, this is what this feels like. And you react. And you carry that with you. And actually into your adult life, it gets worse because you're holding it, because it's becoming more and more familiar. And as you saw, what happens is then that trigger that no one else can possibly know about. Imagine like it's really, you weren't at fault. And you could say, well, she's not at fault because she's dealing with trauma and something made her do that. But as adults, we have a responsibility, obviously, to be in the world and to behave in a certain way. And we have to heal our traumas so that when things like that happen, we can still feel, maybe we can feel something, we can recognize it, but we have control. We have control because we know what it is, because we understand that the person who has just said or done something has no idea, and it's not fair to go flying off the handle at them. That's why we have to we'll heal our traumas so that we can behave properly with other people, so that we can parent properly, so that we can have healthy, loving relationships. Because if we don't love ourselves and completely trust ourselves and know our own value and worth, we can't have healthy relationships, because we're constantly needing something from someone else, and we're setting ourselves up to be in abusive relationships because we're just too needy.
Yeah.
Most important relationship we have is with ourselves.
Right.
That's the foundation of every other relationship. So we have to heal. We have to heal our past hurts and traumas.
And that goes for, entrepreneurs who have a lot of clients. You know, it's not just about the relationship that you have at home, it's about the relationship you have with your clients. So
Absolutely.
how can people overcome those triggers? You know, is there something that they can know, do or say or think about that when those triggers come up, they can kind of
Yeah.
balance themselves?
Yeah, very, very definitely. And I mean, it's like everything. It's a journey. It's a process. There's no point just doing it once or twice and saying, "Oh, it doesn't work." And it's really a question. This is where I use hypnotherapy.
Mhm.
So I love hypnotherapy because obviously we're dealing with the right part of the mind. We're dealing with the part of the mind where the damage is done and the damage is stored. And I think most entrepreneurs understand that 95% of the actions that they do through the day are directed by the subconscious. So if you imagine the thoughts that are sitting there, the beliefs, the perceptions that are sitting in your subconscious that were picked up by the time you were 10, they're running your adult life. So if we can uncover and disrupt and rewrite those the thoughts, the beliefs, and the perceptions that don't serve you, then we're changing your thoughts, which change your actions, which change your results.
Mhm.
So that's on the hypnotherapy side. But aside from that, meditation is very good. The thing I find with meditation, though, is it's great for relaxing. But if you're going to use it for healing, what do? You really need someone to be able to direct you into how to heal once you're in meditation. Same with hypnotherapy. But there are definitely things that people can do aside from that. And I think one of the most powerful things is to start to notice. This is what people don't even, everyone just says, "Oh, this is how I am,"
Mhm.
or "Oh, this happens because." Well, no, you have the power to change it. And when you start to notice and to understand, well, what happened? What caused that? What situation was I in? I've done so much healing myself over the last 10 years. I'm totally recovered from all my CPTSD, my depression, my anxiety. But there is one trigger I have, and probably it would cause me a panic attack maybe once a year. But the thing is, I know the trigger. I know what the trigger is. I know why. I know what it relates to. I know the sensation when I start to feel it. So I know to take control. I know what to do. But that's not an immediate thing. That's something I've learned.
Mhm.
And it's about learning to take control. So as you said, the client that you had earlier, it would be a question of her really taking hold of that, saying, why does this happen? How do I feel? How do I recognize it? Why do I react as I do? How do I want to react instead? If I'm going to deal with this situation as the best version of myself, what do I want to do instead? And how am I going to bring that about?
Mhm.
And
You
yeah.
had mentioned, I think you said CPTSD.
CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, I mean, here in the United States, I don't think we even say the complex part. Maybe is that something different?
Yeah, it is. It's quite specific. Post-traumatic stress and complex post-traumatic stress are very different. They are both a trauma response, but post-traumatic stress tends to relate to an event, a
Hmm.
particular event. Like you could have post-traumatic stress from a bad car accident, or witnessing a murder, finding a dead body, being on a plane that catches on, something that really causes fear within your system.
Hmm.
But it's a single event. And what happens, you can learn to recover from that because it's a single event and because it isn't about you as a person. It doesn't affect your character. Yes, there's fear,
Hmm.
but the event happens outside of you and is a one-off and leaves your character intact. It's just the fear response that we have to deal with. And this is and obviously the same applies for war veterans, although they have more exposure. So that's post-traumatic stress. Complex post-traumatic stress develops in childhood, and it is from severe and sustained, consistent and persistent long-term abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, or emotional. And the difference is, number one, it involves betrayal, because it will be family members or friends, the people that you look to for love, support, and encouragement, and to help you find your place in the world, abused you. It's a gross betrayal. Plus, what I said earlier, one of the problems is the way it leaves you feeling about yourself. A child in that situation has no opportunity to develop a platform where they understand their value, their worth, that they are loved, that they deserve a great life, that people can be trusted. And people in that situation, so people with complex post-traumatic stress, they tend to have a very skewed version of vision and perception of themselves, of life, of other people, what's expected of them. And that's why a lot of them end up in very abusive relationships with narcissists or domestic abuse, or they will be used for sex, because that is how they have been taught to think of themselves. So do you see, it's quite, it's very debilitating, and it affects the whole person. Right. So to work on that, you know, that comes with a whole load of depression, anxiety, can come with some very complex personality disorders, dissociation, multiple personality disorder, those kind of things. But again, it's all the damage is done and stored in the subconscious. And I deal with a lot of complex post-traumatic stress, and I will deal with people who have been in therapy for, I'm dealing with someone at the moment who's in her 70s and came to me after 60 years of therapy.
You know, in my first business, I had a carpet cleaning business, and a lot of my clients were women, and so I would go in their homes and clean their carpet, or upholstery, or whatever they wanted, but a lot of these women were skeptical. They, you know, a man's coming in their home, and
yes,
and they were afraid, and you know, a lot of the things I had to do before I even got in their homes was, you know, talk with them on the phone and make them realize, hey, you know, we are a legitimate company. This is what we're going to do. But yeah, there was a lot of trauma, I think, built up in some of them.
Yeah. So what happens then? I mean, there's two ways that we operate in life. So we either, and obviously we're all products. We're products of everything that we were taught, everything that we experienced, our environment. And really it gives us two platforms. So we either operate from fear or we operate from love. And if we're operating from love, then we had safety, security, support, encouragement. And we learned that people in the world are basically good, and that we deserve a great life. And we're encouraged to be the best version of ourselves. But people who were brought up in abusive situations, they didn't have that. They were brought up literally to fear people, to fear life, to fear themselves, that nothing is good. They have anxiety, they have depression, and they are constantly fearful of everything.
Yeah.
And the only love they know is love that is based in control.
Yeah. And I've noticed that, you know, a few clients over the years that have overcome a lot of trauma in their lives, have overcome a lot of abuse, and they start becoming successful. And then they allow those family members or their friends to come in and say, you can't do that. You know, you had this past life. You can't be successful now. And it brings them down.
Yeah.
You know, and then they start questioning why they're an entrepreneur all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, the tendency you see, it's this tendency to need to be accepted.
Hmm.
And what happens is, as you let go of what was holding you back in the past, it's generally people.
Yeah.
It will be your family, it will be certain friends. And I'm not saying that you have to never see them again, although if they are narcissists or really badly abusing you, no contact at all is often a good idea, but that's a whole topic on its own. But you do have to distance yourself, and you have to start listening to different people. And some of the work that I can do with people when we work through all this stuff is to prime them for this, to make them understand, as you start to grow, the people that are trying to hold you back, they will want to pull you back because you are moving away. If you are elevating yourself and they can't, then they are going to want to bring you back. Well, it's their job to elevate themselves to their level, not for you to drop back down to theirs. But I think people are never prepared. They always think that if they're going to be successful, then the people in their lives will be glad for them.
Right.
And that is often not the case. People, it's a question of assessing, well, what are people's motivations in what they're saying for you? Do they want the best for you? Or are they, again, is what they're saying motivated and on a foundation of fear?
Yeah, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years, and you know, now people are looking at me and are like, "Oh, Rob, you're very successful now. It took 30 years to get here, and I had
Yeah.
to overcome a lot of things to get here,
Yeah.
and you're just
Yeah.
noticing now."
Yeah.
So, you know, how do people get a hold of you? And I know I tripped up at the very beginning, and I said your website is Sally G.
Yeah.
So is it sallyg.com?
Yeah, that's a really good way to get hold of me, because my website, it is a good website. I'm very pleased with it. It has all about me, all about my work on there. People can get hold of me on there. I have a podcast. I've just launched a podcast where I'm interviewing women who have had extreme trauma in their past and overcome it to create success. So that's fantastic to listen to for anyone who's feeling like, why is this so hard? Will I ever get over this? And feeling like maybe it's impossible, because quite often they are told by a psychologist, by a doctor, by a counselor, oh, you will never be able to overcome this. That's very common with complex post-traumatic stress. And the reason I'm telling these stories is because it's just not true.
Right.
You know, I've had complex post-traumatic stress myself for a long time, severe depression, extreme social anxiety. I don't have any of that now. You can, if you work with the right person in the right way, you can overcome anything.
Oh yeah.
And everything. You can be, do, and have whoever you want.
I think, but you have to want it.
Yeah, you have to want it, and you have to know that we call it the work. You know, when we say, oh, have you done the work?
Yeah.
There's a reason we call it doing the work.
Yeah,
Because
you have
it
to
can
be
be hard.
accountable to yourself too. I mean, you know, I see so many people that they just don't want to put the work in, and they don't want to be accountable. They just say, "Give me the magic pill."
Well,
you gotta
there
do
isn't
it.
one. There isn't one.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and for all those who are listening, please go to Sarah's website, sallyg.com. She's got some brilliant videos on there. I was actually looking at them earlier, and listen to her podcast, you know, read her blogs, go to her social sites. And if you have questions, just tell her, hey, I saw you on Rob's podcast, or I listened to on the eHeroes podcast on Apple or wherever you're hearing it from, and go say hi. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.